The Model 850 transporter is easy to operate and easier to maintain. To begin the maintenance process, remove the 4 cap screws located along the top surface of the adjusting rod end of the transporter using a 1/4-inch Allen wrench. Remove the top and end plate from the unit. Before removing the carriage rails, identify the proper carriage rail placement for each rail opening. Look for the stamped letter on the end of the rail bar. First, remove the set screw securing the carriage rail A. Slowly remove the carriage rail A by rotating it slightly. This will allow you to clear the internal valve rod as you remove the carriage rail. Notice the carriage rail features a 3-inch milled slot, which engages the valve rod during operation. Next, remove the pistons. To do so, insert the air nozzle. Avoid using full line pressure. Be sure to apply only a small amount of air pressure. Otherwise, the pistons will fire out too rapidly and may become damaged. Now remove carriage rail B and the adjusting rod end. Wipe down both with a clean cotton cloth. As required, use a safety clean solution or similar solvent. Do not use abrasives or Scotch-Brite on the adjusting rod or internal surfaces. Take this opportunity to inspect the rails and adjusting rod for excessive wear. Then clean the bores with a clean cotton cloth and inspect for scratches or debris. Do not use abrasives or Scotch-Brite on the bores, as this can remove the metal finish. Now remove the muffler assembly to gain access to the valve rod and the O-rings. Using a spanner wrench, loosen the assembly. Next, for Model 850 units only, insert a 12-24 tap to extract the valve rod. For Model 250 units, use needle nose pliers. Then extract the valve nut using a Vibro valve nut extractor or similar tool. A common putty knife can be adapted for this purpose. Remove the valve nut. Using a Vibro extraction pick or similar hooked device, remove the O-ring set. The O-ring set includes 6 O-rings and 5 brass spacers. We recommend sorting out the pieces to assure the correct order for reinstallation. Be certain that your set begins with an O-ring and ends with an O-ring. Tap the Vibro bearing extractor into the bearing opening until it is flush with the unit. This will allow the bearing extractor's fingers to expand and engage the bearing, making a snap sound. Insert a tap bar through the opposite rail opening. Be sure the tap bar engages to the extractor in such a way as to not break off the extractor's fingers. Tap the bar until the seal and the bearing is removed. Here you can see how the Vibro bearing extractor seats itself on the tapered rod. Once the bearings and seal have been removed, we then clean the unit. Wipe it down with a clean cotton cloth and inspect for scratches or debris. Now to reinstall the bearings, look for the tapered edge. Add a small amount of lightweight oil to the bearing to ease the reinstallation process. We recommend Mobile DTE Light brand oil or equivalent. Place the Vibro bearing punch or similar shaped bolt against the bearing. Drive it home until it is flush with the seat. Remove excess shavings. Now use the vibro bearing punch to install the seal. Drive it home until it is flush with the seat. Repeat this process to reseat all 4 bearings. Before installation, be sure the O-rings and spacers are clean and free of defects and debris. Using a 5/8 vibro insertion rod, slide the bearing set into place. Begin with an O-ring, then a spacer, then O-ring, and so on. Seat each ring spacer set using the insertion rod's outer sleeve. Before installing the valve nut into the unit, be sure that it is clean. This will ensure that it is not cross-threaded during installation. Complete the process using the Vibro valve nut extractor. Screw the valve nut down completely until it seats with the O-ring. To ensure that the valve nut seats properly, insert the nut with its slot facing approximately 1 o'clock, so that the number of revolutions ensure the proper pressure on the O-rings. The carriage rail should freely clear the valve nut. Next, clean and inspect the pistons. Install new O-rings if necessary. Surface scratches can be removed with a Scotch-Brite pad and light sanding. Be careful not to Scotch-Brite the O-ring or the O-ring seat, as this would undermine the piston's seal capacity. Add a small amount of lightweight oil to the piston and piston opening to ease the reinstallation process. Then, reinstall both pistons. When replacing the adjusting rod, be sure that it is fastened so that it extends 9 inches beyond the end plate. Lubricate the bearing wiper, B carriage rail, and the adjusting rod with a small amount of lightweight oil. Now, reinstall the B carriage rail and the adjusting rod. The B carriage rail is positioned on the same side as the adjusting rod opening. Take care during the installation not to inadvertently push out the bearing wiper on the opposite side of the unit. To install the valve rod, begin by threading it onto your tap, then lubricate. Insert the valve rod until it passes each individual O-ring. The valve rod should slide in and out with some resistance. Unthread your tap and seat the valve rod completely by pressing down with your thumb. Now install the A carriage rail. Note the set screw recess at the end of the rail and its relationship to the mill slot. Lubricate the rail before reinstallation. As you install the rail, rotate it slightly, as this will ensure that the seals are not damaged during installation. Finally, align the rail with the set screw slot and tighten the set screw. Next, reinstall the cap and muffler assembly. Now reinstall the top and end plate assembly. Reinstall the 4 cap screws. Be sure to place the 2 longest screws in the outside openings. The 2 shorter screws are inserted in the inside openings. The longer outside screws provide for single tray attachment. Finally, conduct a bench check by adding air to the unit. To do so, first attach an air regulator with filter to the unit. That will ensure that dirt is not reintroduced into the unit. The bench check ensures that the maintenance procedure has been performed properly before returning the unit to full operation. Note: be sure that all Vibro transporters are fed by an air line equipped with a filter regulator and lubricator. Also, be sure all models are securely fastened to a sturdy base for good scrap removal.